It's Purim, folks, coming to you. And we have a bunch of amazing little allusions in Masechet Berachot that have to do with Purim. And it happens to come out today on Taanit Esther. So that's kind of a nice little, what we call hashgacha pratit, a little divine help. That what we learn inside is happening outside. And what's happening outside is going on inside the holy books and, of course, inside our heart. So we are on page Nun Zayin at the bottom. Michael Avraham, welcome. Nice to see your name. Hopefully we'll see you on Purim. Taanit Kamei Rabbi Yochanan, there was a teaching in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Kol minei mashkim yafim lechalom. All types of drinks, if seen in a dream, earthquakes like that too, are a good sign in a dream. Chutz min hayayin, except for seeing wine in a dream. Well, that's interesting. Why would that be? Now the Gemara goes on to explain, Yesh shotehu v'tov lo, v'yesh shotehu v'ra lo. There are those who drink wine and it's good for them. And there are those who drink wine and it's not good for them. But seeing it in a dream is not necessarily the aspect of the drinking of the wine. Right? Well, we see support from the verses of the Torah and this idea that those who drink wine and it's good for them, that wine gladdens the heart. And there's those who drink wine and it's not good for them. Give a strong drink to the one who is lost. And wine to the bitter of spirit. So that's an interesting thing. This advice is that if a person feels lost or feels bitter in his spirit, that the pasuk is telling you to drink it. Drink wine, it'll be good for you. But on the other hand, the beginning of it says, no, that these are examples where drinking is not good for the person. So it is rather ironic that this is coming out of the Talmud right before Purim. But remember, we're talking about the language of dreams. We're not talking about the language of doctors and psychologists and sponsors, etc. We're talking about the seeing of the drinking in a dream. But we see that the verses support wine going either way. That wine can do a lot for a person if they're in the right place, and then if they're in the wrong place, it can do a lot of damage, as we've all heard and seen, etc. Well, let's keep going with this a little bit. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan letana. Rabbi Yochanan said about a bright Tani talmud hacham leolam tov lo. If a person is very learned and a student of the wise, as a Talmud Hacham, literally that's what it means, a student of the wise, that wine is always good for him. Again, we're talking about seeing in of the idea in the dream. Shneimar lechu v'lachamu v'lachmi ushtu v'yayin masachti. Go and to your bread and my bread and drink in wine masachti, the wine that you have drawn, the grapes, the wine you have made. Okay, so this seems, why is this like this? Why are we saying that a Talmud Hacham is always good? Well, the assumption here is that a Talmud Hacham knows how to drink. And he doesn't drink too much, and he doesn't drink too fast, and he doesn't aggrandize drinking. This is a big problem. The aggrandizing of drinking or drugs or anything, that's the avodah zarah of the thing, okay? That's where we kick in that isur, that negative quality to some of these gifts that God has put on the planet. If we make it into something it's not, that's a form of idol worship. And we want to stay away from that kind of stuff. Okay, so it's the exaggeration, the aggrandizing, the elevating the thing to something more than it is. You know, the point of drinking is not drinking. The point of drinking is to open the heart so we can talk to each other with our true feelings. Nichnas yayin yotzei sod. And so a lot of times we're holding sod, we're holding secrets inside, and it hurts. And it takes a lot of energy, mental energy, to keep secrets. And a person has to be very strong. But sometimes we need to to remove these secrets, to express them into the world, to take them off the heart. And a little bit of wine can help, as most of us have experienced. A little bit of wine, and suddenly you care more, you talk more, you're interested. A little too much, and all that goes away. So in Purim, we got to be a little careful. Now, this whole point of a Talmid Chacham that drinks, it's always good for him. It's also because the idea of wine is expanding consciousness. And the idea of limited consciousness or constricted consciousness, we call it mochin de katnut, is not a good thing. That's a time when we're thinking from the wrong side of the brain, and we're feeling and we're judging and we're processing reality in a very negative way. So to go from mochin de katnut to mochin de gadlut, to expand our mind from our constricted state, we have to do things. The minute we wake up in the morning, the mind is constricted. That's the very nature of waking up when the soul re-enters the body. So we wash, we say blessings. These are all designed to help us. If you want to really do the job fast, jump in a cold mayan in the morning, and you'll see your mind will open up very quickly. You could feel like a whole new soul coming onto you when you give it all that mesirat nefesh for going in a cold mayan in the mountains or wherever you find it. But anyways, so wine is an important thing in Jewish life and Jewish culture for thousands of years. It's a ceremonial thing in most cases, and that is really part of the role of the Jewish people, is to take mundane things and make them holier, to elevate them in their usage. And that's what sacramental usage of liquor or wine is for, to elevate our minds and not simply remove the weight of consciousness through alcohol. That is not the job. The job is to expand our heart with more love and understanding for ourselves and our fellow men. Okay. Another little point about the Talmid Chacham idea. This is a constant debate that you hear of, not only today, but throughout the centuries of the poskim. What is a Talmid Chacham? It used to be, back in the day, that a Talmid Chacham knew the whole Talmud by heart. Now, there are still people like that. I've met a few, and they're amazing people. But they're very rare. In our generation, Rav Avadia Yosef defined a Talmid Chacham as a person who, any question you ask him in Torah, he knows where to find it in Shas. It doesn't mean he knows the whole Sugya by heart, or the whole Perek, or the whole Masechta. But he knows where to find the answers to questions in the Shas. And that's also a great skill and a wonderful thing, a gift that a person can receive from his learning. So the definitions will vary from the group of Torah people that you associate with, whether it's Hasidic or Litvish or Sephardi. The idea of a Talmid Chacham is a person who spends his life with the wise, attempting to draw wisdom and understanding to be a better person, a better husband, a better father, and a better Jew, of course. So we want to be with the wise. The goal is to be with them, not to, to call yourself. To be called a Chacham is someone else's job. That's not our job, right? So let's keep going. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. And we've had this verse before, that if a person gets up in the morning and a verse falls on his lips, it is a form of a small prophecy, it's called. Now, it could be a prophecy about that day, it could be about your life, it could be about something in your family, etc. But it's called a nevuah katana because it's not going to be the type of prophetic vision that is going to have ramifications for lots of people. For example, all the prophecies that we find in the Tanakh are essentially prophecies for people in the future, not just for the one who saw it. That would obviate the purpose, right? If a person got a prophecy only for himself. So all the Tanakh prophecies are for the future and for thousands of years to come. Whereas these little prophecies have to do with us in our life every, moment by moment as we live. Now, verses, not everybody knows the verses. The verses can also appear in English or a phrase from a verse. And I think that all of us have had these clairvoyant moments where somehow something feels like it's percolating upward and it's looking for words, looking for expression. That can happen too. It can happen through music. If you wake up and a verse of a song is on your lips, it might very well be that song is very personal, important to you, and it's teaching you something about what's happening then in your life. Okay. Tana Rabbanan. Shlosha melachim hem. There are 3 kings that are seen in dreams. Haro'eh David b'chalom. Someone who sees King David in a dream. Yitzapeh lachasitut. He should look forward to piety. Now, piety, in the classic sense, is going beyond the letter of the law. It's because you love God so much, you want to do more. You want to keep more than what the rabbis have prescribed and what the Torah has told us to do or not do. That's the idea of Hasidut. Hasidut nowadays is a word that usually means the followers of the Baal Shem Tov, or his students, or his students, or his students, since 1700, when the Baal Shem Tov was first on the scene. Now that Hasidut is because those people did choose a pious lifestyle, and they chose a lot of what I want to call stringent interpretations of the halakha, because that's one way a person can attempt to get closer to Hashem, is by being extra strict. But that's only one way, and it doesn't always work. So when we say Hasidut in the Talmud, we're talking about the original pious. We talk about it in modern parlance and language, in our everyday language, that we're usually talking about Breslov or Chabad or Belz or one of the other dozens of Hasidut. And the main thing we got to remember is that it's all good. We're talking about good within good. That's the distinction. Now, so if you see King David, you're a pious person, which is not a simple thing. It's not easy. Because the goal, you can't just be pious, you have to be happy. If you're pious without happiness, you're bitter. And nobody I don't think that's what God needs from us. All right. Now, a person sees Shlomo HaMelech in a dream, Yitzapeh lochma. He should look forward to wisdom, of course, because we know that Shlomo HaMelech, he's a hacham mikol adam, the wisest of men. Achav. Now, if a person sees the king of the 10 tribes of Israel, Achav, who was famous for chasing Eliyahu and Navi around and threatening him, and famous for employing 400 prophets of the Baal. And the Baal is a certain type of avodah zarah, of idol worship, that was very big in the Middle East at the time. It's involves some pretty disgusting things that they do in their temples. And unfortunately, the king of the 10 tribes was not solely for Hashem, shall we say. And if you see that in a dream, that fellow, yid'ag min haporanut, a person should worry about punishment. In other words, they're showing us in a dream that we need to do tshuva very quickly, because there could be punishment on the way. Now, poranut, there's all kinds of punishment, right? It's not just going down to the principal's office and getting hit with the paddle, right? All kinds of things. And it's serious business. Hashem should help all those Jewish people, all the people in the world that are suffering from various difficulties, tragedies happening, left and right in the news and in our lives, and we need to pray for each other. Okay. The next category, Shalosha Nevi'im him. Now, if you see any of these prophets or any of these books, from the Tanakh, if he sees Nevi'im, Hem Ro'eh Sefer Malachim, for example, the book of Kings, Yitzapeh Legedulah. He should look forward to greatness. In other words, power, position, status, because it's a book about kings. Now, someone who sees Yehezkel or the Sefer Yehezkel in a dream, Yitzapeh LeHochma, he should also look forward to wisdom. V'Yeshayahu, Yitzapeh LeNechama. If he sees the book of Yeshaya, he should look forward to comfort, because Yeshayahu's main job was comfort, right? And Yehezkel's main job in his prophecy was to give over the Maaseh Merkava images, which teach us about the transcendental meditation in a Kabbalistic sense, the real thing, not the thing coming out of ashrams in India. And Yehezkel's other job was to give over the image of the third Beit HaMikdash. So you see that if you see the book of this prophet, his main message is being transmitted to the dreamer. Okay? Now, Yirmiyahu, of course, we know Yirmiyahu had a very tough time as the prophet. He was told from the beginning of his mission, of his prophecy, that it wasn't going to be so easy. In the end, of course, he was murdered. Someone who sees that book should, Yudag Mina Pornud, again, should look out for danger, for punishment of some kind. Now, Shlosha Ketuvim Gedolim Him. There are three great writings that people could see in a dream. Aroy Sefer Tehillim. It's a Peh LaChasidut. If you see the book of King David, who was called the Hasid, then certainly if you see his book, it's also a sign of receiving piety. Mishle, if he sees Mishle, of course, one of the famous books of Shlomo, which is translated as Proverbs, then he should also look forward to wisdom as Shlomo. Ve'Iyov, if someone sees Job, the great sufferer of the Tanakh, Yidag Min HaPornud, he should also worry about difficult judgments against him, and that means it's time to daven, and really daven. God should help us all daven when we need to daven, because it's not just how hard you daven, or how long, or how well you say the words, or how much your heart is in it. It's the timing in your life, because things are happening all the time, and blessings come and go, and din, judgments come and go, and so it's very important to pray when you get the thought to pray, because we don't know what's hanging around in the spiritual atmosphere. But anytime you say a prayer, something's going to happen, even if it's tiny. So let's keep that in mind, that prayer is a constant tool for connecting and correcting where we're holding spiritually. And it's not just what we have in the books, it's what you have in your heart. And those are the prayers that Hashem loves the most, because Hashem already has the books. The Shekhinah wrote those books. He wants to hear our books, our prayers. And that's precious to Hashem. Okay. Now there are three other minor writings. Shosha Ketuvim Ketanim Hem. Haro'eh Shira Shiri B'Chalom. It's a Peh LaChasidut. Person sees the Song of Songs. He should look forward to piety, Koheles. He should look forward to Chokhmah. And Keynote, which is Lamentations, the person also must worry about punishment. Now the next phrase I thought was very nice, considering where we are in the Jewish calendar. Haro'eh Megillat Esther, someone who sees the scroll of Esther in a dream, Nes Na'aselo, a miracle will be done for him. Now what kind of nes? We don't know. Doesn't tell us. But the fact is that the Megillat Esther that we're going to read very soon is a book about a miracle. The miracle of Purim, the miracle of the Jewish people being saved from an evil oppressor. So this is not a new story, unfortunately, but the prototype of it is Megillat Esther. So if you see that in a dream, it means your life is the book, and your life is going to have a miracle in it. And this is something that I think we have to have confidence in, not only in our dreams, but in the rabbi's statements about them, that, again, they're not just making things up. Okay, Shlosha Hachamim Hem. Now there are three wise people that you might see in a dream. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was from the house of David. It's a Peh LaChokhmah, who is a very wise person, and therefore dreaming of him is a sign of receiving wisdom. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, it's a Peh LaAshirut. Eliezer ben Azariah was famous for his beard turning white overnight, and he was sitting with the wise men on the Leil of Seder on Pesach night with Rabbi Akiva, etc. But he was also very known, the Talmud says, for his wealth, extremely wealthy. And so too, someone who dreams of him should have that blessing. Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, Yedag min ha-poranut. Now, if we see Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, who is called Acher, that's not a good thing because he left the Torah. He felt he had risen to a level where he could keep the Torah or not. He could do what he wanted or not. And, it's true. You can. Rabbi Nachman calls the commandments advices. Keep this one. Keep this one. It's a good idea. It's not a command in your face telling you have to do this or you're going to burn in hell. That's old-time religion. We need to get rid of that religion fast as possible. We don't believe in that kind of thing. We believe God is merciful, and every moment we can change the scenario of our existence. However, Elisha also made a mistake because he went up to heaven to a very high level and he saw an angel sitting down. And everybody knows that you can't sit down in heaven. There's only standing. God is the only one who's allowed to sit down. By the way, that's the rule in the Beit HaMikdash. When you go to the Beit HaMikdash to bring your korban, or to accompany your family or friends, or to see some Kohanim, whatever the reason, you cannot sit down in the Beit HaMikdash. And the only time you could sit in the Beit HaMikdash is when you're the king doing the mitzvah of Yakhel and he's reading the Torah out loud to the people. That's the only time. So you see that the sanctity of the Mikdash is compared to the sanctity of the throne of glory in the world of Bria, way above this physical plane. Okay. Now a new section begins. Seeing various types of animals in a dream is a good thing. Of course, he tells us, we learned before, except for these three animals, an elephant, a monkey, and a kippur. I tried to find kippur, I didn't find it yet. If someone has a little Rabbi Google handy, they could look it up. It's, I don't want to stop the Shira, but it's a type of animal, kippud, kuf pei vav daled. But the Gemara argues, Vahamar more, but a master said contradictorily, Haro'e pil b'chalom, pele naselo. We already learned that if you see an elephant, it's a good thing. Why are you saying it's not a good thing here? Lo kashya had misrag, had lo misrag. No, when you see an elephant with a saddle on it, like they have in India, that's a good sign. But if you see an elephant without a saddle, it's not such a good sign. Why the saddle? Well, a saddle is a tool for control. A saddle is a symbol of, like a chair, a place of rest, a place of power. And if you have a saddle, I guess, on an elephant, you might have a little better chance of making it. You've seen these people riding elephants, especially in India. Well, elephants were used in war for thousands of years, and elephants were part of a building, a construction culture, also in the ancient world. So we shouldn't worry if we see a saddle on our elephant. Now, if you have an elephant in your backyard, you better have more than a saddle. If we see various types of tools, metal tools in dreams, it's a good thing, except for three. Chutz mimar pesuv kardom. That would be a ma'ader is like a hoe that you dig the earth with. A pestle is like a chisel, and a kardom is an axe. Now those tools are used. The Rav says on the side, those tools are used generally for destroying things and not building things. Therefore, we say that they wouldn't be good things to see in a dream. But we're talking the chazinhu bekataihu, that you see these items in a dream with handles. If there's a handle on the dream, then it's still a good sign. And why? Because a handle is a symbol, again, of control, of power. Whereas an axe head without the handle is just a hunk of metal that's dangerous. And so too with a hoe, a digging implement like that, etc. So you see, again, the rabbis are paying attention to these details, and in our dreams we must do the same. If you see a tiny detail, don't put it down, right? If it's a color, it's a shape, it's an item, just put it, keep it in your mind and for later, and it will, through our skills, our gift of Hashem's gift, I should say, we can hopefully understand what is being trying to communicate it to us. That wasn't a very good sentence, sorry. Amar Rav, no, Rav disagrees. He says, Lo yada itari ad chazai rashi lefatot. He said, I did not become wealthy until I saw turnip heads in a dream. Maybe I should plant some turnips in the backyard, stare at them all day, and then you'll have a dream of turnips, and then you'll be rich. I'm not sure if it works that way. But you know what? Hashem likes a sense of humor, I believe, and I believe that, if you happen to have your own garden, you happen to have turnips in the garden, and you stare at the turnips, and you know this Torah, who knows what might happen? Hashem might just do it because, he wants to give you a gift, and he wants the gift to come through the means of Torah. That's the important thing. The goal in life is not to be powerful or wealthy or beautiful or talented. The goal is to be attached to God through his Torah. And then all the things like wealth and beauty and skill and talent, they fit into an organized system of life. Right? What a terrible thing to become a millionaire in business or a great rock star or entertainer, and then success destroys you. Is that what we want? Do we want a type of success that destroys us? Of course not. But we can only control the success when we have the proper guidelines for living, right? And of course, this is the first book about all that. Nowadays, there's 10 million self-help books that are going to tell you how to live, and I'm not. All of them have some wisdom in them, I'm sure, or they wouldn't have been published. But we're going back to the source here. We're going back to the beginning of wisdom that was given over to us by people who gave their lives to get it, right? Okay, now. Going forward, also we have a little condition put on even on a turnip head. It says that you have to see the turnip in the dream in the place it's growing. It can't be like on a table or in a salad, or at the end of somebody's fork. It needs to be growing on its branch in the ground where turnips grow. Now, many types of colors are nice in a dream, except for the powder blue that we call techelet, which is, of course, the color of the sky on a beautiful day. It can be also the color of the dye of the chilazon, which was used to make the blue thread that we're commanded to put on our garments. Why is techelet not a good color for a dream? It represents all these mitzvot and these high concepts. Why would that be? Well, we have a comment over here from our great Rav Rashi, Rabbi Yitzhaki. He says, Techelet Yaroku, it's a type of greenish blue. We understand it. Misha Panav Yarokim Cholehu. And someone's face who's green, they're sick. So in other words, if you see Techelet in a dream, it's a sign that you're not well physically. Okay, that's what he's telling us. But also, Techelet is a reference to the kingship of Shemayim. That's, why we use Techelet as a symbolic name of the color of heaven, because heaven is a symbol for the upper worlds, the place where Hashem is instantly available, instantly perceived. Okay, that's what's happening in heaven. The first thing you see in heaven is God. You know you're there. And even if you're not in the holy places of heaven, you still know about the presence. So here, Techelet is a symbol of God's kingship. And kingship is usually connected to judgment and justice. So we want to be careful of that. There was a discussion amongst some Mekubalim in our yeshiva about why some people don't wear the blue thread nowadays and some do. And we talked about this before, because our fathers didn't do it, so we don't do it, or our fathers did, so we do. Or if your father wasn't religious or wasn't Jewish, then you can do whatever you want. You're a new soul. You're a new agent. However, the techelet thread, the rabbis that I heard about, Rav Gedalia Koenig, Alav Shalom, and Rav Mordechai Shirabi, spoke about it, and they together at Nar Shalom about 45 years ago. And the way I heard this conversation was that the reason we don't want to wear the techelet before the Messiah is because it's like pushing the din. It's pushing kingship. It's a little bit bringing on that power that we got to be careful of. Okay. Nonetheless, komine ofot yafim lechalom, many types of birds that you might see in a dream are good. Chutz min akarya, akifufa, v'kurpafri. Now, I tried to look up some of these birds, and I got a bunch of Latin names, right? So if you guys are interested in Brachiotus palestria or Spalax typhulus, these other names, I'm afraid we're not going to make it too far with our Latin. But these are birds. Some of them live by day, some live by night. The general rule is if you see a night bird, it's a scary thing, and it could be representing din. Whereas a day bird, a nice bird, like we learned yesterday about chickens and about ducks, that those are good things in a dream. Okay, here we're talking about more like what are called the of toref, birds that eat other animals, right? And which is, by the way, one of the important understandings we have about kashrut, is that the birds that Jews eat are birds that don't eat other creatures, generally, other animals, right? The chickens and turkeys and these kind of birds, they mostly live on grains and vegetables or whatever they can pick out on the ground, right? I'm sure they go for a worm or two or whatever, but generally the carnivorous birds are the ones that we don't eat, because that contributes a certain power to the soul that we don't want. We don't want this bloodlust. And carnivorous creatures, animals, lions and tigers and bears, that bloodlust is a dangerous thing. We've had many dogs here on the farm, and it's a very interesting thing. They say once a dog kills for the first time, and unfortunately, we've had chickens that have been attacked by dogs. It's not too pretty. But once a dog, his first kill, he tastes that blood, he's not the same anymore. He's going to have that bloodlust. And if you haven't seen it in the dog, you shouldn't need to see it. It's not so pleasant. But when you live in the country, you're on a mountainside, you have area to roam, it's okay. But you still have to protect the birds, right? But it's the bloodlust that we're trying to stay away from, and so too in our animals. Now, shlosha nechasim laguf v'ein aguf nehene mehem. Oh, interesting. Okay, I think I'm not going to start this sugya because it's going to bring us a lot further on. And we will continue, God willing. Tomorrow is Purim de Perazim, as it's called, one of the names, here in Israel, outside the walled cities. And we will be reading the Megillah live on Facebook around 11 o'clock, give or take. So I welcome all of you. It should be really fun. We should have a crowd of people. And I try to bring some experience from my college drama classes into the reading of the Megillah. So it's a good time. And we will look forward to seeing you. Let's do a few halachot now. An interesting halacha on Purim is that we eat seeds and dried fruits in memory of Daniel. Daniel Hanavi, Daniel Ish Hamudot. Daniel, who was Hatach in the Purim story. Now remember, Daniel was exiled with Mishael, Azariah, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, the three righteous people that were saved from the fiery furnace of Nebuchadnezzar. They were all eventually exiled to the palace of Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. So there's a lot we can learn from this. First of all, when Nebuchadnezzar and a lot of conquering kings take over a country, what are they looking to do first? They want to monopolize and grab the intellectual power of that country. Right? And so what did Nebuchadnezzar do? Well, he went straight after the holy men. Because back in the day, the holy ones were holy men who studied. They knew medicine, they knew geography, they knew a lot of the basic sciences that we take for granted today that weren't available back in the day to everybody. So the king, the conquering king, would go after the intellectual power of any country. And that's what he did. And that included Daniel and Mordechai of the Purim story and these other tzaddikim. Well, Daniel refused to eat meat in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. He knew it wasn't kosher meat, and he wasn't going to eat it. And even on punishment of death, the king was so... Can you imagine a king threatening to kill you if you don't eat his hamburger? It's a little bit comical, you know, but really, I think the king understood that if they ate unkosher meat, they would be more subdued to his power. See, part of a Jew's power is making his own choices and eating what he wants to eat. So Daniel hid the fact that he didn't eat the meat, and he ate seeds and berries to stay alive while he was captive in Nebuchadnezzar's palace. Now, of course, later on, Ahasuerus conquered Nebuchadnezzar. The Persians overturned the Babylonians, and in that swing of political power, the Jews just, of course, changed cities and changed locations and jobs and whatever you have to do to stay alive. Okay, so we remember we eat seeds and nuts on Purim in memory of that. That's called Hasidut, you know, because the truth is the law says that Daniel could have eaten Nebuchadnezzar's meat because it was pikuach nefesh. It was the ban of death was on him, and so you're allowed to eat whatever you need to eat to stay alive. You know, kashrut is a little further down the road. But that's where real piety that we spoke of earlier about King David, the idea of piety, of going beyond the letter of the law, means that I'm going to keep the law even to my peril. And that's courage. And that's what it takes to make it in this world when people are not so worried about God's will. They're more interested in what's going on in Washington and in London and in Brussels. Okay. But Baruch Hashem, we have this wonderful tradition, and we just have to do the best we can with it and learn. And that's why, we're here on Facebook Live every day, because I need to be here. I need to be learning these books every day. It's not a once a week thing, a once a month thing. I go to church, I go to temple, I go, when I feel like it. We used to joke growing up, well, we're once a year Jews. It doesn't really build you. It doesn't really give you something to make life more special, more precious. But when it's every day, you start to sense the power in what's called in Hebrew the kviut, the fixing of times of Torah. They say when a soul goes to heaven, the first thing they ask you was, were you faithful in business practices? And did you set times for Torah? So once you have those times in your day, you'll see that your days change and they become qualitatively better in many ways. Okay. Now, we're going to go to Rabbi Nachman in Likutei Moharan. And here we've also been learning, of course, about the mechanics of dreams and how the soul and the body and the food and the angels are all contributing to the process of how consciousness emerges into the mind, right? How the subconscious becomes conscious, or I should say even unconscious, if we want to use those psychoanalytical terms, which, they work sometimes, right? The unconscious is deeper, but nonetheless, this process the rabbi's been explaining to us for days and days is one that is happening all the time. And so once we learn these principles, how the system works, you can apply that intuitive understanding to other areas of your life. So here we see the rabbi told us that negative forces can enter our food. That sounds pretty superstitious, pretty old school, mystical from, thousands of years ago. But he said it 200 years ago. Okay, I don't know about today. I don't know about any negative angels in all these food factories or the processed foods that we eat. But he's talking about unprocessed food because that's a different thing. Now, it doesn't really matter the processing or not. I'm sure that if a negative angel wants to enter somebody's food, that he could do it regardless if it's in a plastic wrapper or it's growing on it's fallen to the earth beneath a tree. That's not the point. The point is to understand the interrelationship between the physical and the spiritual, that they are not separate worlds. They are interactive, interfacing worlds. Spiritual enters physical, physical impacts on spiritual. Okay, and this is one of the real disservices that have been done by certain modern scientists that want to push God way out of the laboratory and far down the street to the church. They don't want science and religion together. They don't want politics and government and religion together. That's for other abuses. But the point is that real scientists know that the spirituality and the physicality are bound together. They're not separate, like separating church and state, separating science and God. It's not true. And all those philosophers that wrote about this stuff from mid-19th century Germany, I don't even want to say their names, and etc., and the English philosophers and scientists, they did a huge disservice to humanity by doing that, because it made a split in our brain between the natural world and the spiritual world, and there is no split. The brain is an extension of the spiritual, and it is our gateway. Okay, and so we need to restore that unity of mindset to see that we are working together with the spiritual world. Okay, it's not them or us, right? It's us, period. Okay, so we have to work on that a lot, and I find that learning physics and certain types of science actually helps my learning of Torah and especially Kabbalah, because the parallel structures of ideas are blatantly apparent between, if you study like even certain items in high technology and versus the study of the human body and the structure of the soul. And cybernetics does address that issue, how the human being and the computer are actually reflections of each other. So that's another thing. You can get a PhD in that if you want. But what we need to see, we don't need the PhD. It might not hurt, but what we need to see is the unity of these realms, right? That the physical and the spiritual are transmuting information back and forth. Okay. All right. We learned yesterday also about the negative leaders that can actually bring on physical impurity, sexual impurity, and it's a pretty stark take on things. If you think about that, we have a bad leader somewhere, and that his thoughts and his speech and his actions are impacting other people. We don't really like to think that way, right? But that's the nature of what it means to be part of an integrated system of soul, which we call Am Yisrael, Am Levadad Yishkon, a nation that will dwell separately. We're not looking to be separate. We were created separate. And it's not a blame game, and it's not a put down to the idea of inclusiveness. The Jewish people are extremely inclusive with each other and with the world, but we still maintain our independence and our identity. And if you don't think that's important, and if you think inclusiveness comes with a capital I, and that's the only goal of modern philosophy and political correctness, then you've missed the point, because you're erasing your own identity and your own individuality. And that's what the communists try to do. And that's what they did in China, and that's what they did in Russia, and they destroyed their countries. Okay, they're rebuilding them now, after decades and decades of communism. But all communism do was erase people's personal motivation to improve. Why should I go to work when I work hard and the guy next to me doesn't work hard and we make the same money? So socialism destroyed human initiative. And it's like you're trying to legislate human nature. Human nature is that we need to want things and to go out and do things to get them, because that's the way God designed the world. And I'm an individual and you're an individual. Are we inclusive? Yes. Do I sacrifice my being Jewish because you're Christian? No. And do you sacrifice your Christianity because of some Muslim? No. And it's the same way between all peoples. We are unified and individual, and we have to have both. And this is something I mentioned before, and I guess I have to keep coming back to it. It must be important somewhere inside. But so Rabbi Nachman took us through that to see that part of this integration of soul, which is called Am Yisrael, we are giving to each other whether we like it or not. That when we do something in Jerusalem, it has an effect elsewhere in the world. Some people like to call it the butterfly effect. It's kind of cute. But spiritually, it's arivim zeh lazeh, that we are interconnected and we have impact. Okay, and that means responsibility. And responsibility is a hard thing. People, it's not easy to take responsibility for things that I don't even know happen. So, but really what we're responsible for is other people's pain. And if we do anything that cause other people suffering or discomfort or dishonor, we need to fix that. Because the honor, kavod in Hebrew, is another name for the divine presence. Okay, when you talk about honor, true honor, you're talking about the presence of the divine. And so a person's honor is God's honor. And we need to show that to each other as much as we can. And when we have not good leaders, the best thing you can do is leave. I don't know about leave the country, but leave the influence of those people and stay away from them as much as possible. Okay. We also learned about the concept of uvut adin, which is injustice, and how injustice is the result of the wrong angel operating in the mind of the person who's doing the judging, which again goes back to this ideas of judges and leaders who are making improper decisions. It's not just that they're making an improper decision in court one day and some guy loses money that he shouldn't have. It has reverberations out into the world, and it causes big problems elsewhere. Now the Rav goes on, Vazai kishabatu ma'ana, when this impurity comes, that flows out of injustice, ein tikun rak al yedei kishur merkava shetzarik lekasher merkava. The only tikkun is to bind all the angels of the merkava together. Now, how in heaven do we do that? Is anybody teaching that? How do you bind the angels of the merkava together? Well, let's see what he says. This bechinat merkavo argaman. God's chariot was argaman, like purple. Shehem Raphael v'Gavriel Michael and Raphael, Gavriel, Michael, Uriel, and he doesn't have it written here. What's the fourth one? Oh, I forgot. It's off the top of my head. Right, we have Michael is the angel of the right arm. Raphael, Gavriel is the angel of the left arm. Raphael is the malach of the torso, and Uriel is the angel of the extremities of the body, right? The hands, the feet, the brit, etc. Okay, these four things need to be bound together. How do you do this? Okay, the Rebbe's going to explain a little bit. Okay, he says, Bechinat kar ruach, bechinat hardat aguf. Now he says, interesting, this binding of these angels Shehem Malachei HaMerkava, who are of course, the the conduits of this transcendental chariot that brings things from above to below and from below to above. We understand, it's understood that we have to tie it all together. To repair the defect in this chariot. Because it's from there the fallen loves emerge. Therefore, before we go to sleep at night, nitaken b'kadmonim lomar. The ancients fixed a teaching, a practice for saying Kishor Merkava before you go to sleep. Ta'inu Michael, Mimino Michael, Mismolo Gavriel. Saying the names of these angels is already a form of binding them together. Ki aide Kishor Merkava nitzoli mitum'ah. Because when you bind these powers inside you, you are saved from the impurity that oftentimes happens at night. Okay, so the binding of angels sounds like it's a tall order, a little bit above my pay grade, as they used to say. But look, we can understand it because of Rabbi Nachman explains to us that these angels are powers inside us. One is the power of strength, one is the power of love, one is the power of balance and healing, and one is the power of expression. The basic work is to understand that they all need to work together. That you can't have strength without kindness, you can't have kindness without strength. You have to have health and balance between the two, and you have to have all these three have to come out into the world with proper expression, which is the idea of malchut. The proper expression of your inner life is going to be through your mind and your speech. So this is another way of understanding this power, that we want to bring all the separate parts of our soul together, and that's going to help us, especially at night before we go to sleep. Okay, now the Rebbe goes on to tell us a new thing, a new paragraph. I'm just looking forward. Well, we have a ways to go. No hurry. No worry. That's a pretty good one. No hurry, no worry. I'll try that. Zerach, why don't you try that one in a little bumper sticker? That'd be good. Anyway, so now binding these angels is also is parallel to the three types of shofar blasts that we use on Rosh Hashanah: the long, the short, and the middle. That the shofar won't blow in the city and people won't be afraid? No. In the ancient days, the shofar was the alarm. When you heard the shofar blowing, you knew either enemies were coming or enemies were there. And that's why it's the end of the pasuk is Am lo yecharadu, that the nation won't be afraid when they hear the shofar blow. So this, of course, is connected to the idea of yir'ah. Bechinat haradat aguf, and the Rebbe ties it in also with the trembling of the body. Even that physical trembling that you can get from awe, that your body will really start to shake. Now this is also an aspect what he calls kar ruach, the cool spirit, right? Cool spirit here means that you're not so fast to get excited. You're not so fast to accept everything you hear. You're not so quick to judge matters, right? The cool spirit, ish tuvunot kar ruach, King Shlomo said, right? The man of understanding has a cool spirit. He takes it easy when he has to. And we all have to work on this, because some people are cool by nature and some people are very hot by nature. But the biggest challenge is the person who has to change himself, of course. If you're hot by nature and you need to cool off, that's a high spiritual avoda. If I'm already cool by nature, it's not a big service to go out and be cool. You're already cool. And that's, I'm sure, where the slang for cool comes from back in the 60s, when it started cool to be cool and call people cool and et cetera, right? That's all connected to this idea. And cool is related to tuvuna, which is also the left brain. It's just the thinking, processing, mathematical language part of the mind. So I want to cool that part of the mind down. It's going to work better. Okay. How are we doing on time, folks? We got a little bit of time. We're going to have 15 minutes or so. The next line, V'kar ruach ish tuvunot, he brings it right there. And through the cool spirit, we're gonna help fix the faith. How? Through a man of understanding. Okay. So you see that we have one of the catch-22s of religion in general, and Judaism also, is that if you want wisdom, you have to go to somebody else to get it. That's one of the secrets of the oral tradition. That God wrote the Torah in a way that you're going to have learn it with somebody else. It's going to help us understand it better. And this transfer of knowledge, the Rebbe says, it also is true about faith. I want to have faith in God. I need to see it in somebody else to understand it better, to feel it, to live it. It's not an idea in a book, okay? So when you have faith, I need to be around other people that have faith to absorb it, to learn it in a real way. And this is the idea through the ish tevunot, a person will come to faith. All right? Now the next piece, the Rebbe goes on to explain the idea of shvarim, of Trua, the second shofar blast. Moshe haya ro'eh, v'chinat tefillin. Now Moshe was called a shepherd, which is, of course, a shepherd is a perfect metaphor for a spiritual leader, right? Because he takes the sheep out into the flock and he feeds them, he brings them their nourishment, he protects them from animals, he helps them when they're lost or they're hurt. The shepherd is a perfect example of what a spiritual leader should try or strive to be. Now, Moshe was called the Ro'eh Ne'eman, the faithful shepherd. Of course, and the rabbis say that it was because he never changed one word of God's prophecy. You think about it. Wouldn't it be nice to be a prophet? Well, if you think about it a little deeper, you might see that there's no room for editing. There's no room for me in God's word. The whole point is that the human being removes his ego in order that the higher spirit can come into him. And that takes humility, and that also takes wisdom how to make ourselves empty. Now, this is something we're going to be teaching in the future on some of our courses on YouTube and Facebook, and we will, of course, announce those things when they're finished and ready to go. But these courses, we're going to practice meditation with this understanding of creating that empty space to receive our higher selves. And it's something we can work on today. It simply means giving yourself the time and the place to be quiet and at peace and remove all the things around you in your life. Remove your worries, remove your doubts, remove your fears, remove your fallen loves, and try to get to that place of that empty center. And I guarantee you, if you touch it for 1 second, you're going to be a different person. You're going to find out there's something much deeper inside than we even realize. Okay. So Moshe was the faithful shepherd, and that's the idea we learned already of tefillin, right? This headset over here has the parshiot, the parchments with the holy letters written on it, and this is a conduit that reflects the properly aligned structure of the mind. Well, that's a mouthful right there. The properly aligned structure of the mind is the tefillin. So you need that kind of mind to be a ro'eh ne'eman, to be a faithful shepherd. Okay, so the tefillin is really the help aid to the shepherd to be able to do a proper job with the sheep. Okay? And this goes on for every level, whether you're a manager in office or you're a father at home or you're a football coach. We need this idea of tefillin, this idea of the mental structure that's corresponding to a higher pattern. Okay. And of course, he brought an idea earlier that the faithful shepherd is the opposite of what's called the ro'eh zonot, which we translated as the unfortunate phrase as a shepherd of prostitutes. But it doesn't mean necessarily that, but it also means a shepherd who goes out and he's chasing women all the time, which is, of course, is far from what the Torah is asking from us and what God wants. Now, shvarim, the third type of shofar blast, ze bechinat halomot tzodkim v'amitiim. The idea of the shvarim is the idea of dreams that are true and correct. Bechinat et mispar halom ve'et shivro. The mispar halom sounds like the shot would be the number of the dream and its fractions, its portions. But it could be, I'm looking at the voweling because, a little change in vowel changes everything. Yeah, mispar. I was thinking it could be misaper, which is the teller of the dream. But either way, this idea of the true and righteous and correct dream is the idea of this blast of the shofar, da'ayinu chalamot tzodkim v'amitiim, are true. All right. The Rebbe is going to go on and explain this even in more depth. And I see that there's a massive column ahead of us. And part of our work here is to learn a certain amount each day, not too much and not too little. Just the right amount to take us to a little level forward, a little closer, a little newer, a little freer, a little bit wiser, a little bit more patient. This is what we're trying to receive to become better people. Is we need these qualities, but we can't get them all at once overnight. This is immaturity. It's dangerous. People that want to be, prophets overnight, they usually end up in the wrong institutions. I'm sorry to say. We got to start slow and stay slow, but we're steady. Okay. So the Rav goes on, and so too this idea of the shofar is the idea of the repair of justice, of judgment, the proper judgments between good and evil. And this is also reflected in the verse from Tehillim, Lev nishbar lo nitke, that the broken heart Hashem will not reject. So that is the tikkun of mishpat is first, the secret is that if I want to repair my power of judgment and justice, I first have to recognize that it's broken. How can I fix something unless I recognize it's broken? So the Rabbi Nachman explains, Da'inu masha halev nishke lechabot chimum halev. What is this idea of the broken heart is, listen to this is amazing. It's the heart's attempt to water the fire of the heart. You see? Shahalev nishke lechabot chimum halev. That there is this deep water that can help cool the heating of the heart, which is going to, of course, bring us back to the ish tuvunot karuah. Or karuach ish tuvunot shehu kamo nur daluk. Because the heart is like this lit flame, this candle. Bechinat yishberu para'im tzama'am. Right? That he brought to them satisfaction to the thirsty and the in need. That's the heart that's on fire. The heart itself is on fire and it needs to be cooled off. So how do we accomplish that? Through the ish tvunot dole, he's dipping into what the Rebbe calls the mayan, the spring of advice. Okay, I think we're going to stop there. I'm going to tell a little story that our friend Michael Alevi sent us a story. I want to read it to everybody because I value Michael and his stories. Once an important trader was traveling with a consignment of fine Hungarian wine. During the journey, his assistant and the carriage driver said to him, "Here we are, traveling with all this wine." Sounds like a setup for trouble. And now the story, uh-oh. It's so interesting. I'm so new with Facebook, but the letters went gray, so they're harder to read. Let's see if we can keep this story going. I'm sorry, folks. It's the first time I tried this. So they were traveling on this dream, and they said, this is Hungarian wine. And they thought to themselves, this is a hard journey, and why don't we have a little bit on this long journey? It's difficult. Let's have a little bit of wine. So clearly it necessarily wasn't theirs, and it was for sale. So they had some of the wine, and they had a small taste. A few days later, the assistant happened to be in a small town with some people who were drinking wine and praising it extravagantly. You see, there's that extravagant factor around alcohol that makes it very dangerous. They said it was Hungarian wine. Let me have a taste, said the assistant. They gave him some, and he said, this isn't fine Hungarian wine at all. He disagreed. They were almost offended and told him to leave. But he insisted, I know very well that this wine isn't Hungarian because I was with a wine merchant who had genuine Hungarian wine. And I know what it really tastes like. But they ignored him. But when the Mashiach comes, the story goes on, and this clearly is a Rabbi Nachman story from Chai Moharan, the life of Rabbi Nachman. When the Mashiach comes, then they'll know. When the Messiah comes, we'll be able to tell the difference between the qualities of the wine. Of course, wine is always compared to Torah. The time will come for the fine old stored up wine of the righteous to be served. Others will be fooled into believing that inferior wine, Romanian wine, is the real goods, or the Strovitsarian wines are fine old vintages, but none of them and none of my followers will be fooled because they've already tasted the good wine. So that's Rabbi Nachman giving us a little insight into his own perception of his Torah. And this wasn't such an easy thing for people to do, is to come out and tell you, well, what I got is the best. I got the best wine. Or I tell you, your wine doesn't taste as good as my wine. And so, of course, they're using wine as a metaphor for Torah. And that implies that different rabbis giving over different Torah teachings. But what we really know is that the idea of the revelation of the Torah in the times of the Messiah is the revelation of the Kabbalah, and in language that we can all understand and benefit from. So we are in the midst of the revelation of the wine, of the Torah, of the Hasidim, of the Mekubalim, the revelation of Kabbalah in the language of the people, so that all of us can aspire to a fruitful, wonderful, intimate relationship with God through these amazing teachings. So that's the Hungarian wine, the wine that you know is from the right place. With all that said, I want to bless everybody with an easy fast and a wonderful Purim and a great day tomorrow, and drink smart and don't drink it fast, and drink a lot of water with it, and to give your body a break, and we should merit to continue to learn these Torahs together. It is the Hungarian wine. And we look forward to seeing all of you at our Kriyat Megillah tomorrow morning. And we'll be back on Facebook Live from Nar Shalom, God willing, on Sunday. So all the best. Hag Sameach, Purim Sameach. Until next time.